Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rhinestone Podcast. I'm your host, Banner Driscoll, and I'm the CEO and founder of Rhinestone Productions. Rhinestone Productions is a virtual music studio with one goal, which is to empower musical creatives. And one of the ways we do that is through this podcast. Now, the reason we started this podcast was really simple. I was working with people in our virtual studio making great music, some of the best music out there. And what was ended up happening was they would release this music and it would just fall on dead ears because they didn't know how to market it. They didn't know how to put it out there. They didn't know how to pitch the playlists. And so rather than try to tell them myself, I decided I would start interviewing people and start learning how to do this, how to get your music out there, how to get your name out there, and talking with all these different musicians. And you know, one of the things that a lot of people really want to do is they really want to become viral. They want to have viral success. And I started looking around and thinking about people to have on the podcast to do that. And one of the names I came up with was the original viral musician on YouTube, Mr. Andy Mckee. Now, if you guys don't know Andy Mckee, you guys should go do yourself a favor. Go Google a song called Drifting. It was probably the first viral guitar video I can remember seeing on YouTube, and a lot of other people as well. And you know, I talked about this with a friend. Drifting was really like an eruption moment for guitar playing, because what drifting was had all this stuff about like slapping the guitar body and stuff like that, kind of making the guitar sound like a drum. And I can remember when that song came out, very quickly everyone, all the guitar player friends I had in school, went from like learning like Jimmy Page solos to buying an acoustic guitar and like slapping it. And you could even see like singer-songwriters doing the slappy stuff and the fingerstyle stuff. And it really spawned this like whole new generation of fingerstyle guitar players. It really was just this moment where YouTube was at the right point, Andy Mckee's music was really great, and it just spawned this incredible thing. And Andy's turned that into a fantastic, amazing career. And our conversation we had today was just such an amazing, enlightening conversation. We talk about how he was able to go from virality to building a career. We talk about practicing. We talk about recording. We talk about his sense of rhythm, his sense of melody. We even talk about the time that he played with Prince and the wild things Prince wanted him to do and all the different conversations and how Prince was on top of him about learning about his masters. But we do all of that here. It was really great. Andy was such an amazing guest. I can't wait for you guys to check this out, this podcast. As always, if you have any questions, any concerns, anything you want to talk about, you want to work with us at our virtual studio, you can always email me at rhinestonemusic@gmail.com. That's RHYNESTONE music@gmail.com. And if you guys like this, please like, comment, subscribe. It really helps. It makes it so much easier to get better guests on. We've been having some viral moments lately. We had a clip from Greg Howe that went off. We had another clip with Rick Emmett that went off. And when we get, even though we've had these numbers, people still look at how many subscribers do you have, how many comments and likes to the video getting, and it just makes a huge difference. So if you guys could do that, hit that subscribe button, that would be awesome. And without further ado, here's our interview with Andy Mckee. Welcome to the Rhinestone Podcast, where we navigate the ins and outs of the music industry. I'm your host, Banner Driscoll, and today we're shining a spotlight on one of the most extraordinary talents in acoustic guitar music, Andy Mckee. Andy Mckee's name has become synonymous with innovation and mastery in the realm of acoustic guitar. Hailing from Topeka, Kansas, Mckee's journey began with a deep love for music and a determination to forge his own path. Mckee first gained widespread recognition through his groundbreaking performances on YouTube, where his virtuosic fingerstyle technique and captivating compositions, notably Drifting, quickly garnered millions of views and propelled him to international fame. Mckee was one of the first musicians on YouTube to go megaviral, setting a precedent for countless others to follow. His pioneering approach to the acoustic guitar, drawing influences from a diverse array of genres, has inspired countless musicians around the world. Beyond his solo career, Mckee has collaborated with esteemed artists across various genres, showcasing his versatility and adaptability as a musician. His collaborations with icons like Prince, Tommy Emmanuel, and Dream Theater attest to his status as one of the most respected guitarists of his generation. In recent years, Mckee has embarked on an exciting new product, Triplicity, alongside rising stars Callum Graham and Trevor Gordon Hall. This collaboration brings together three exceptional talents in the fingerstyle guitar tradition, pushing the boundaries of acoustic music and captivating audiences with their innovative sound. Their self-titled debut album comes out April 4th. But at the heart of it all is Andy Mckee's unwavering dedication to his craft and his relentless pursuit of musical excellence. Join us as we explore the remarkable career of Andy Mckee from his humble beginnings to his enduring legacy as a true master of the acoustic guitar. Andy Mckee, welcome to the Rhinestone Podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing real well after that intro. That was very kind.
Well, that's good.
Thanks, man.
That's good, man. Only the best for our guests.
Thanks.
So, Andy, there's so many different places we could start. I mean, you've had a multiple decade-long career, and but I'm really fascinated about this new record you have coming out called Triplicity, which is a collaboration, as we said, with Callum Graham and Trevor Gordon Hall. It comes out in a couple days as of this recording, and so I do have a couple interesting questions about this. So, in several interviews, you have stated that you are a terrible jammer and that you are much more comfortable playing music by yourself. But this new record is a collaborative record with two top-level acoustic guitar players. What were some of the challenges for you of making a record with other people, and how did you overcome them for this project?
Well, to go back to that jamming bit, I still feel like it's not really something I'm really great at. I've always thought of myself more as like a composer in a way, I guess, for solo guitar. So I take time and get real meticulous on what I'm trying to put together. And in the, heat of the moment, like jamming thing, I just never really developed that skill to where I'm real proud of it, I guess. But both Callum and Trevor are both kind of like me in that sense too, where they feel like they're more like composers and they like to spend time on putting things together. So, when we came together to work on Triplicity, well, initially we've actually done shows before together where like they'd be on the road with me, maybe Callum, or another time maybe Trevor, and we'd always play songs together at the end. And what we would do is like take a song from Trevor and take a song of mine, and independently we come up with an accompanying part for it. And so when we get together before the tour would start, we'd play and be like, "Oh man, that's awesome, perfect." And we just kept doing that. It was like, man, these new sort of versions of these tunes are really interesting and different than the original recording. So that was where the idea came from. And so that's how we came together just about a little over a year ago, and recorded the album. And it's, finally coming out in a couple days. So, but so in putting those tunes together, it was more like we were putting on our composer hats in our studios and sitting with the tracks from the other player and coming up with ideas to go with it.
So, you mentioned obviously taking apart some of the tunes from each other, and you got a chance to do at least two of those that I saw for this new record, which was For My Father and Hunter's Moon, and fans of yours will know both of those songs. Why did you pick those tunes as opposed to any of your others, and what did you learn from exploring those tunes again? In a trio setting, I should say.
Yeah. So I think the suggestion came from the guys. They were like, how about we do this one or that one, and I'd say, sure, let's try it out. And sometimes, they'd come up with their own part, and I'd go like be on tour with Callum, and we'd do For My Father at the end of the night. It would sound great. And then completely independently, Trevor came up with something, and the way that it all blended together was incredible. But yeah, mostly it was, we wanted to have a good mix of tunes on there. Some of my tunes like Hunter's Moon, kind of more aggressive a bit with that one. And there's also Never Grow Old on there, which I play with a flat pick, so it has a certain kind of energy. And For My Father, just a great mellow melodic piece. So it was kind of just getting a blend of good tunes that sort of had a spectrum of energy and intention on the pieces.
So when you guys were arranging these songs, were you guys able to work in the room together to arrange them, or was it just like, hey, I got this piece for that, I'm adding it on top? I mean, because the thing I think of is, one of the things that's so great about you and your solo music is you make very full compositions. And what I mean by that is there's bass, there's treble, there's a melody, there's rhythm. Was there any sort of like reduction in your playing as far as that was concerned? Or was it just like, did they add them on top? What was the process like for putting those songs together?
Yeah, it was mostly like they come in with a part, and most of the time it was great as it was, but maybe there might be a couple alterations we'd make, or I'd come up with a part for one of Trevor's pieces and be like, oh, maybe let's try this, So we were always open to, that collaborative spirit, and don't let egos get in the way or whatever. Like, oh, this is my part, we're not touching that. But so you have to have that, going in. But yeah. I still feel like, the solo thing, I love doing that too. So this is, it's like a project kind of. We'll probably do another album or two in the future as we go. But yeah, it was just fun to kind of reimagine and reinvigorate some of the tunes that people have heard, and see what people make of that. And plus, those guys are like my best friends too. And a couple of my best friends in the world. So whenever we get a chance to be on the road together, it's always fun. And so it was like, well, let's have an album. So maybe we can hit the road together.
Yeah. Is there
fun enough?
Are there any plans to tour the album with you three?
Yeah, we're getting some shows lined up now. It looks like we're going to have some here in the States, like in maybe Michigan area, and down in the Midwest later this year. So yeah, that's all coming together now. So, but yeah, it's kind of tricky too, though. Like I know your podcast kind of letting people that are getting into the business know about this stuff a bit, and it can be tricky kind of getting a new project off the ground, even though all three of us kind of have our own name. It's like you go to promoter, you have your agent go to promoters like, hey, you want to book Triplicity? And they're like, well, what's that? Nobody knows what Triplicity is yet. So we're kind of getting the album out, here in a couple of days, and then start getting the push on getting some touring together.
Yeah, that's so real. It's if you don't have that brand recognition, people don't know that, and especially now, it's gotten so competitive in the last couple of years post COVID. It's wild.
No doubt, that's for sure.
So when you guys recorded these songs, were you cutting them live in the studio, all three of you together, or were you guys? Are you laying parts on top of each other? Are you guys cutting takes? Are you going for? Are we recording to a click track? How are we recording these songs in the studio?
Yeah, we actually went to a real nice studio that was in a refurbished barn that was turned into a recording studio in Connecticut, and it was this record producer for Windham Hill helped design the studio, and he engineered the album for us as well. His name's Corin Nelson. So he did a lot of records with the sort of new age new age label Windham Hill on the 80s. So he had all these really amazing mics. I think we had like 5 or 6 microphones, and we would all kind of go in and record our part. So like, let's say if we were doing Hunter's Moon, I would go and record that. And we would just, have the other guys come in and then record their part on top of it. So yeah, we would just kind of lay down the initial track, kind of like the original recording of each guy, whoever's tune it was, and then the other two would come and record on top.
And so for the acoustic guitar stuff, how many mics were you using for? I know we get a little technical here, but I'm curious. How many mics are you using for like recording? You said 6 mics.
I think there was five microphones for the album. Yeah.
What, 2 up close and room mics, or how would you set it up?
Yeah, actually, Corin Nelson, the engineer, handled all that. I wish I had some more detail for you. I'm kind of bad about that stuff. I don't really know much, but there was kind of like this cluster of microphones there, and maybe 1 or 2 kind of sticking out closer.
Well, that's fair. I mean, it's you're the guitar player, not the engineer, right? You just have to show up and sound good, and they'll make the magic happen. Okay, so speaking of which, is there a difference in your playing approach between playing in front of a crowd as opposed to playing for content or studio recording? And the reason I ask is, as a solo acoustic guitar player, you are. It seems like there wouldn't be much of a difference, but I know the way acoustic guitar is, it resonates in rooms. And I'm sure you know this. It resonates different in a smaller room as opposed to a large theater. Do you play differently in each situation, or do you have a strategy in your mind of how you play acoustic guitar for, like, a viral, not viral, but a piece of content versus like playing, in a theater somewhere? Do you have different approaches?
Not really, I guess. It's all pretty much the same. When I'm on stage playing, I plug into a preamp, and use the pickups on the guitar. But when I'm recording here at home, like if I'm recording a track for an album or something, I'll have microphones instead. So, I tend to be a bit nervous when I'm recording in front of microphones, because you can move a bit and it changes the tone. And then plus, if you're recording something like for an album or whatever, it's like a permanent record. You don't want any mistakes, or you want to be perfect time, and just everything can kind of get into your head so much. But when I'm on stage, I actually feel more comfortable up there than in the studio. It's just, I think of it, you know who Leo Kottke is, guitar, fingerstyle guitarist. He had a quote once where it was like recording music is like embalming it, which I always thought was hilarious. It's like it's dead. So, like when you're in a live setting and you're playing in front of people, you can have whatever energy you have and you're getting from the audience, and it's just this exchange that kind of happens, and it just feels great. But sometimes in the studio, I get down and I'm just like, this has got to be perfect, and But sometimes that you get too far with that, and when you think you're making something perfect, you're really making it like kind of gross. It needs to have that fluidity to it, that humanity in there, which some people might call errors now and then. But the way you might play with the time a bit, push and pull, all that stuff. I think about that stuff more than I used to, and how you can express yourself through that kind of thing. But yeah, those are kind of the difference between live and recording for me. It's the recording thing is kind of more uptight and nervous for me.
So I want to backtrack a little bit, because you did talk about the fluidity of your playing process. And so when you are in the studio, or even when you're doing the Triplicity record, are you using a metronome? Do you guys work to a click track or anything like that? Or do you are you doing everything based off feel? I mean, you do have an incredible sense of feel. It doesn't look like you're playing to a click track in any of the classic, drifting or For My Father videos. But I'm curious, when you're in the studio, are you using the click track at all, or are you doing anything with a metronome or anything like that?
No, not with the Triplicity thing. We didn't, and most of my recordings, there weren't any click tracks. Maybe on one or two, but trying to think of what ones there might have been. But normally, it's just another thing to think about, kind of, and it kind of can put me off a bit, strangely enough. So yeah, there's the push and pull that you can be like a little bit before or ahead, or behind the beat, as long as it maintains that rhythm over time, I think it works, and it gives it a bit of character if you push and pull a bit.
What about editing takes together, like comping? Do you do anything like that for your studio work?
Yeah, there's been a couple of times, like, punching in where, you thought you had a good take, but then suddenly you flubbed something, but you had something a minute ago that was so good. And you're like, man, I don't want to lose that. And I don't know if I can do it exactly like that again right now. It's so like, yeah, so I think it's okay. In the studio, I'm not a big, like, you can't punch in, and pretty much all my favorite guitar players, it's kind of normal. And it's just because you want to get like as good of a take as you can as a representation of the composition, and if you play it live, maybe you'll have some little flub in there, but I've started to care less and less about that kind of thing, and more about just you feel it. Like when you're giving a performance, get back to that, just that energy in the room that you have, that connection with the audience. And if you do something, like you make a mistake, you can make a stupid face or you can make a joke out of it. I think people need more humanity in their stuff these days, and that's what I want to try to do when I play a show. I
love it. So you said that you have learned to care less about your mistakes live. How have you learned to do that? Like, is it just with age, with wisdom? Is it, I mean, because that's something I think a lot of people have an issue with, is they want it to be perfect. I mean, we live in the age of beat gridding and auto-tune and Melodyne. How do you, I mean, and I love it, because I think your music, everybody I've told who knows you, that knows that you're coming on, they love, like, oh, I just love the way his music makes me feel. It feels good, and you're playing. I guess what I'm getting at is like, how did you how does one learn to care less about the mistakes and just keep going, to keep the fluidity going?
Yeah, gosh, it's a tough one. Thanks for saying that too, by the way, about people saying how it makes them feel. That's how I always, got into music and what I try to do with it. It's just to express a feeling. Really, it's not so much about how difficult it is, or how impressive or whatever. It's try to make somebody feel something. That's why any of us should play music, really. So that's nice to hear. But I guess about not caring, I guess it's something you either have to have to be able to deal with at some point, or quit or something, because, there's going to be mistakes no matter who you are. There's, now and then something's going to happen. And, so, if the quicker you can realize that it's just a passing thing, if you're a guitar player and you hit a bad note here, you might be the only one in the whole audience that even caught that, you got to remember that too. So, but, there was a time when I had a show in Munich, Germany, and I remember being on stage and the show was going great. And I went to play drifting of all things, and I had a brain fart, like a quarter of the way into it. I was like totally blank. I don't know what it was, like what I was thinking about. Like, oh, the drive tomorrow, I guess we got to go about 200 kilometers, or who knows what, what I was thinking about. But it was just like, oh my God, I'm on stage and I just forgot drifting. But I just and there's actually video of it on YouTube, I think.
Oh no.
No, it's okay. It's totally fine. It is, because it's just real. It was, I made a joke and I can't even remember what I said, but the audience laughed and then we kept going, and that's just, it's all good. And nobody at the end of the night was like, dude, what the hell with drifting? Nobody. It's it's all good. It's just maintaining the feeling and providing a good time for people at the show is the main thing. So.
Did you end up finishing the song? Did you just give up?
Yeah.
You did? Okay, that's good.
I did. Yeah. So it was just like, oh yeah, here we go.
They got the official remix that night.
Yeah, that's right.
So speaking of which, how do you practice for a live show? And I know, watching you play, it's very clear you beat the daylights out of your hands. I mean, between, the way you play and how aggressive you are, obviously drifting and Hunter's Moon, you're beating the guitar. How do you practice for a live show? How do you build up the stamina to do that? And are there any tricks that you use to like get better for playing live? I guess maybe I'm messing this up here, but like, how do you practice for a live show?
Well, I guess most of my tunes that I do in a show, I've played them, quite a bit, so I don't necessarily need to rehearse them so much, but like there'll be, at least a handful of tunes that I'll want to put into a show that, aren't the hits or whatever, maybe, so I need to kind of brush up on them. And so like, or new tunes that, I'm playing live for the first time, things like that. So I'll just, we're just trying to rehearse it several times and play things at different tempos, slow things down or even speed them up well beyond the tempo that they're played at, just to make sure they're like in my hands, that's kind of the main thing. But, I've been playing solo acoustic guitar since I was about 16, 17, somewhere in there. And that's about 25 years ago or so. And so I used to play at little coffee shops here in Topeka, Kansas, and just have these kind of regular gigs around town. And, it was being out there by myself and trying to entertain, 12 people or whatever. And just, after doing that so many times and getting the feeling of what it's like, this is just like being in my room playing guitar pretty much, but there's people watching. And that was kind of the initial way to get comfortable with it. And then as you progress, you might get in front of more people. And so you try to be a little more entertaining, tell stories about your tunes, how you came up with them. And that's a whole component, as a solo artist, you kind of got to develop that, because if you don't have a band up there, you can't really kind of just go right into the next tune. Or if you're changing tunings, you got to say, oh, there's this one, and I put it in F sharp minor 11th tuning because I like the way it sounded. So, just developing that banter and things like that. Or, if something happens on the day of a show that might be funny, that's like locally relevant, like you went to some local restaurant or something, or who knows, just trying to think of stuff like that to put into the show. I guess those are the things, but most of the time, like most of my tunes that I've played several times, I just don't even have to really rehearse them. Just kind of go out there and do it.
Is it just muscle memory? Like you've played drifting a million times, you're good to go. Like,
yeah, except at that one time in Munich.
Yeah. We don't talk about that anymore.
We don't talk about that. I guess it's muscle memory. Sometimes I wonder if that term has a negative connotation to it, because I don't want people to think like I just go up there and it's just routine and I'm bored. I'm actually, every time I do, I played that song so many times, but every time I do, I'm trying to still maintain that feeling in there and try to deliver it with, certain dynamics, or, that push and pull on the tempo. And even over time, like I've changed the intro to it. Same with Brian Lynn, I'll do little variations and blends to keep it interesting for me. And if people, there's, some people out there have seen like 15 times and they keep coming. I'm like, what are you doing? I try to think of, maybe some other way I could, change the piece up a little bit and make a new intro or something like that.
So I've been in bands. I've played with big bands. I've played punk bands. But I've always played with a band. I've done a few small solo shows where I've played for maybe 30 minutes.
Wow.
But playing on stage by yourself for a 60-minute or a 90-minute set scares the living daylights out of me. It feels like something akin to like being a comedian and just being on stage by yourself and having to keep a crowd of multiple thousands of people entertained, which is something you do night after night. So obviously you talked about... Say it one more time.
I said with varying degrees.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a lot better than I am. Let's put it there. So are there any you obviously talked about keeping the banter in there, but are there any tips or tricks or strategies for keeping the audience engaged? And also, how do you build a set list? How does a set list come? How do you think about the flow of a concert in your mind?
I'll start with that second part first here. So usually historically, I've always just kind of arranged the tunes like by tuning, because I love to use altered tunings on the guitar and the way that they kind of open it up and give you some new sounds. So, if you've got a tuning that's, say, Dadgad or one, and then you could easily go from that to like open D. So you just have to change a half step on one string. Maybe then you'll want to put songs like that are in those together, but if you've got one that's like in C, G, D, G, A, D, and then one that's in F, A, C, G, C, E or something, you don't want to necessarily put those next to each other unless you want to talk for half an hour. So, because you got to change the strings for so long, but yeah, like, it's like, that's always kind of been the first thing that came to mind, but I've been thinking about it more lately and really trying to think more about the energy, because if you have too many mellow ones in a row, you might start to see people looking at their watch or something, and you're like, well, maybe I need to play a more upbeat tune next, So, yeah, it's, I like to kind of have something energetic at the start and for a few tunes and bring it down, just kind of that typical kind of ebb and flow, I guess. And I like to actually play a show straight through as much as I can. Sometimes the venues want you to do a break, like an intermission. I prefer to just keep going and play for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and try to keep folks entertained. But also, I've got like a baritone acoustic guitar and a harp guitar, if I can manage to bring that on the road. Sometimes it's hard to travel with, but having the different instruments helps to keep it interesting too. I still don't sing at all on stage. So, a whole night of acoustic guitar is kind of something new for a lot of people to sit through. It's kind of getting a little more rare out there these days. So, keeping it interesting with different tones with the baritone and the harp guitar definitely helps as well. But and then I forgot the first part of your question now because I've been rambling so long.
No, you're good. Are there any tricks or strategies for keeping the audience engaged through a 60 or 90-minute acoustic guitar set?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I guess, just those, having different instruments and different timbres and registers and everything helps. But then, just the banter too. If you can think of, how you might introduce your songs, that's always good. And it keeps it interesting. I actually just played a week ago in Colorado, and it was kind of a cool mix of people. There were some real huge fans, and then there was people that had no idea who I was. And so, it was kind of fun to play for people that didn't know who I was at all, and to hear feedback like, oh, it's so interesting to hear what your tunes are about and how you came up with them. So that kind of reminded me of the importance of that. I kind of got a little bit into the mood of just playing a song and then going into the next one and trying to keep the energy flowing like that. But, I don't know if it really suits me or not. I think my music's so introspective and people are curious about what I mean with these tunes. They don't have lyrics, so they're just they're interested to hear the stories behind them too.
That totally checks out because, again, like I was talking to my friends, and one of the things they kept bringing back was the feel of your music. And so when you make music that hits people in the feels over and over again, people, especially that doesn't have lyrics, right? Like you're not, I don't know, the Beatles. You're not the Beatles, and you can't, what "Can't Buy Me Love" means. You know what "Hey Jude" means. But with instrumental music, you don't have a clear perspective of what it means. You're left to your own interpretation, and so everyone's got their own interpretation. And I think because you've affected their feelings so much, they really want to know where you're coming from it with it. Because I think that's where it comes from.
I think you're right.
Yeah, and it's cool. And I mean, it's just it's so cool that you have all this music that just really affects people, and you have this very loyal audience that just loves everything you do. I think it's so cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's sometimes I forget. It's like I've been home a bit this year working on new music and things, and yeah, I've got some new stuff that'll be coming out this year as well as the Triplicity record. So it's exciting to get some new stuff for the fans.
What can you tell us about this new record?
Well, the first thing I'm going to come out with after Triplicity is it's actually going to be a collection of some video game tunes. Believe it or not.
Nice. Is that with the very viral we theme, or the we theme song, or I don't know what it is. I don't know anything about video games, but I saw it and I showed my wife, and who's a gamer, and she loved it. She's like, "Oh, that's Wii Shop Channel theme or something like that."
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's. I've been actually a really avid gamer since about 1984 or 3 or 4, somewhere in there. I was just a little kid, and so I've always been really into video games. And I guess it was, whenever that video was, it's a month ago or so now. My son was watching YouTube, and that song came on, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's from the Wii channel thing." And I was like, "Man, I always thought it was so cool." And I was like, "I'm going to try to arrange it for guitar while you're at school," and came up with this arrangement. And I was like, "Man, this thing is so fun, and it's just such a cool piece of music." And I thought I'd put it on Instagram and everything. And yeah, it went kind of viral on there. I was like, well, maybe this is something I could put, like at least an EP together. Oh yeah. And then like about a month later, I was hanging out with Dante Frizzella. He plays with Steve Vai now. He's this rhythm guitar player. And earlier that day, a friend of mine was like, "Man, it would be cool if you did the Dire Docks theme from Mario 64. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that would always cool." And then when I saw Dante, he was like, "Man, one of the tunes that really got me into music was Dire Docks from Mario 64. I was like, "What?" This is like a sign, I think. So I've been working on that, got that one worked out. And then I got to do a few other ones at least, and maybe make at least an EP, maybe 5 or 6 tracks of some video game stuff on acoustic guitar.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people will love that for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like money in that video game world. Like there's a lot. I know several people who have their moneymaker for one of their projects is just like going to all these cons and playing like video game music. Like I know a jazz trio who they go to all the big cons around the country, and they just play like Mario Kart, but put 7th chords in it, or whatever. And they make really good money, because the thing about those fans from the I don't want to say nerd world, but the like that nerdy convention type gamers, anime fans, stuff like that, is a lot of them will spend money. They will spend cash, so it's like you might be on the right move there. The marketing mind in me is going off here. I'm thinking of all the ways we could market it, but
hey, all right. That's what to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So one of the things I love about your guitar playing, and we mentioned it a little bit before, is the melodicism. Every song, there's not one of your songs where the melody is not absolutely memorable, or some part in your song is not absolutely memorable. Whether it's the intro to Drifting, whether it's the new arrangement of For My Father you guys have done, every song's melody is memorable. Where do you think your vocabulary of melody comes from?
Eric Johnson.
Hey, that's not a bad answer.
That's uh, definitely a huge influence for me. Eric was and is. That's interesting. I don't know, man. I fell in love with instrumental music at a young age. And the first record, well, it was a cassette that I ever bought was the soundtrack to Rocky IV. And I just loved the music when he was training in that movie, like in Siberia. He was like running up a snowy mountain, all this stuff. And it was just really this epic music, but it was instrumental. There were, words to it. And I just had this feeling from the music. I couldn't explain it, and so I wanted that cassette. I was like 7 years old or so. And so I've always been kind of drawn to the power and sort of the mysteriousness of music in that sense. Like, why do I feel something when I'm listening to it? Like, it's just sound. But I feel like something in my chest, what is that? So I don't know. Music's always kind of affected me in a strong way. And so when I go to create something, I want to create that feeling of something, whatever I'm trying to achieve, whatever I'm trying to say with the music. And so, having a melody that is sort of taking the place of words, it's sort of the lead character in the music you're creating, has to kind of say something. And, when you play melody or lead, there's kind of two ways to go about it. You can kind of focus on playing something sophisticated and tricky and really wild, or you can focus more on playing something that almost sounds like something somebody could sing or say, and I kind of tend to lean that way more, like it's a phrase. Like if you're going to have some segment of your melody, is it something somebody could sing or kind of say, and so I think that's where, again, that kind of humanity comes in, like you're keeping it kind of human based, you're not trying to be superhuman. You're not trying to do something so unbelievable. You're just trying to create an expression that people can understand. So that's what I think about with melody, and yeah, there's some tunes of mine where I got pretty good melody in there. Some of them could have used maybe a little more work when I look back at them, but yeah, I think, if you don't have the melody in there, it's got to be compelling in some other way, like cool chord changes or interesting rhythm, things like that. But I try to, if I'm going to have a melody in there, make it something that people could kind of remember and be able to sing, possibly. So yeah, that's my approach on melody.
Hey everybody, I just wanted everyone to take a second to tell you guys something that's really important, which is if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so now. And the reason I'm asking you to subscribe is because guests and promoters and booking agents and press agents, they look at the number of followers we have. And while we are getting some insane views, I mean, almost 50,000 for one clip, 10,000 for another, unfortunately, subscriber count is what matters. And when you can say, oh, we have X number of subscribers, it means you can get better guests. You build that legitimacy. And if anything I've done as a podcast host has inspired you, if you've learned anything, if you have taken anything to heart, please hit that subscribe button. And I tell you what, man, it'll make a huge difference and allow us to get better guests on, have more interviews, and take things to the next level, which is always the goal. We want to someday get to that level where a Beatle will come on or a Rolling Stone. That's what we want. And so I can only do that with your guys' help. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button. All right. So the other great thing I love about your guitar playing as well is the rhythm. And between drifting, between your very viral We Shop channel arrangement, you're, even the cover of Africa that you do, you're the amount you swing the music and the amount that you play with rhythm, I think is really fascinating. I think it's one of the things that makes your music sound alive. We obviously talked about the fluidity and the performance. But where do you think that sense of rhythm comes from?
Yeah, more. I don't know again on that. It's funny, dude. I guess maybe it's genetic stuff. I don't know why, but nobody in my family actually plays an instrument, but we always had music growing up, on. And so my mom would put stuff on like Earth, Wind and Fire. My dad was a little more into, say, like Neil Young and Bob Seger and Rolling Stones. And things like that. But some of that stuff, like maybe Earth, Wind and Fire in particular, just the groove of it, hearing that stuff growing up. And my mom had like a live concert from Earth, Wind and Fire on VHS cassette that she put on. And I was just blown away by the grooves of it all, and then when I got into actually got into heavy metal when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And I first saw Iron Maiden on MTV, and I was blown away. It was their Wasted Years, and they had this sequence of images of Eddie, who was sort of their zombified, character. And I was way into horror movies at the time. I just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so I started getting into heavy metal. Then I started Metallica when their Video for One came out, from And Justice for All. And Lars was doing the double bass pedal thing, and I'd never heard anything like that. I was like, that is the coolest I've ever heard. And so I don't know, in those sort of bands, I was really drawn to the rhythm stuff, the drumming and the riffs, even though I didn't know anything about it. Hadn't picked up the guitar yet. And when I did, when I was 13, I was into all those bands, and then shortly after that, Pantera. And I noticed that I loved, guitar riffs, like the rhythmic stuff. And then I got into Dream Theater, like 1993 or 4. And that was just like a whole other level of, understanding rhythm and weird time signatures. And I was just as big a fan of Mike Portnoy, really, as John Petrucci. I was just analyzing the drum, like memorizing the sound of the drum parts. I didn't know how to play drums or anything, but I was just fascinated with everything that was happening. It was just like a supernova or something, happened. And so all that stuff is developed into my appreciation of rhythm. And for a while as a guitar player, I really got focused on, especially on the lead guitar, electric guitar. I got really into lead playing and trying to understand Joe Satriani's stuff and John Petrucci and Eric Johnson, all that stuff, and trying to learn it all and all that stuff. And so a big part of that is kind of like technique and learning to play fast and all that. And so, when I was doing that, it kind of maybe didn't think so much about rhythm. It was more like, oh, can I learn how to play this fast thing accurately and everything? And then it kind of came back to me like, the foundation of all this stuff, really rhythm. All music is you start with the rhythm. And even when you're playing a note, whatever frequency, whatever pitch you're playing, it has a frequency of peaks and valleys. That's essentially a rhythm there too, that on and off, up and down with the frequencies. So, I just came to really appreciate like rhythm on another level, I guess, at that time when I kind of came back to it and discovered, the fingerstyle guitar stuff, when I was in my late teens, and players like Preston Reed, who was doing percussive stuff on the guitar body. And I was so impressed with that, that you could do all that stuff at the same time. And so, and especially as a soloist, if you're up there and you're not in a band, you've got to have everything covered to the best of your ability, so having a pretty solid sense of rhythm is vital to keep the music moving and all that.
Yeah. And I mean, all those groups you mentioned, they all have amazing drummers, Iron Maiden, Dream Theater. I know some people don't agree with this, but Lars Ulrich, I think, is a great drummer. Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, and that covers a wide spectrum of stuff there for sure.
Yeah.
Are you excited that Portnoy is back in Dream Theater?
Yeah, yeah, I am. I love Mike Mangini and friends with him too. The times I got to go out with Dream Theater. Actually, it was the first album after Portnoy had left that I got to go on the road with them. So, and then did a few more times over the years. Mike Mangini is a wonderful guy and a wonderful player too, incredible player. But yeah, I guess there's just something about having Mike back and Portnoy back in the band. One of the original members, and just there's nobody better than anyone else. There's just like in guitar, and you reach a certain skill level, I guess, and then you start to develop your personality through your playing, and that's where you start to define who you are. And it's not so much who's better; it's just what do you do on the drums, And I think Portnoy really does something special and unique, just like Mike Mangini does too. But I think Mike Portnoy really, I don't know, there's something about him just screams Dream Theater. You know, he's just one of the original guys, and so it'd be cool to see him back in there and hear the new album.
This is a side note, but one of my favorite things ever is so obviously, like, those who don't know, Dream Theater's music is probably some of the most technical music for a band to play. It's wild. They do 30-minute songs and stuff like that. And Portnoy is just going off. I mean, it's crazy. It's fun to watch him because he's just so all over the place with things. But one of my favorite things is he did an album with Avenged Sevenfold after their drummer passed away. And I love watching the live videos of him playing with Avenged Sevenfold because he just looks like it looks like he's like breathing. It's just it doesn't look like it's hard for him at all. He's just there. He's just going with it. And it's so funny because I've seen one video I've seen is the score album, the score DVD they did where I think it was their 20th anniversary. And they did it at Radio City Music Hall. I've watched that a bunch of times. And so to watch Portnoy go from that to like playing with Avenged Sevenfold and having the time of his life playing the easiest, not easiest because it's pretty hard stuff, but he looks like he's on easy mode compared to Dream Theater. It's really funny. I love it. His face is so hilarious too. He just looks like he's having the time of his life up there.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. That kind of shows you too that, it doesn't have to be super complicated, he was probably having loads of fun just playing, regular old beat,
playing in 4/4 for a whole show.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, it's a blast. Those normies, they have a blast over there. So you are the original viral guitar player. I mean, when I know that's a big statement, but it's the truth. You were the first guy when YouTube came along. I remember I'd been playing for a few years when Drifting came out, and like immediately everybody, it was crazy. I remember it being I was in middle school, and the school I went to, the middle school and the high school were together, and like all of a sudden you came out with Drifting, and it was kind of like this moment where all of a sudden all the acoustic guitar players started like slapping the body, and like even the singer songwriters were doing it. I mean, you changed the whole game, and I'm not trying to, this will lead somewhere, I promise. But it was very much like I don't want to put you on this level, but it was like a millennial version of like you hear those stories of like how Eruption changed the game for guitar. I do feel like Drifting was one of those moments where everyone was like, all right, put down the solo guitar or the solo electric guitar stuff and learning who could play fast and like who can slap their bodies and do the cool things. And it really was one of those moments. And I remember all the acoustic guitar players, if you could play Drifting, you were like the cool musician at that school, So because you were the original viral guitar player, there have been several thousands probably at this point who have also had viral guitar moments. I've had viral guitar moments on TikTok and Instagram, but you've turned that into a career. How are you able to do that?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I guess, you're kind of right. There weren't a lot of viral videos at all on the guitar at that time. There's a friend of mine named Eric Longrain who had a video around that time too, called Air Tap that was kind of going viral too. But yeah, it was sort of a shift, from the old days to the more new days, I guess. I had been teaching guitar lessons. Really, it was my main job at a guitar store. But I'd released a couple of albums, but just totally independently, and at tiny little places that I could get into here in Kansas, pretty much. I did have a little bit of touring. I got to go to Taiwan in 2003 and play a bit. There was a promoter that brought me out there, and we did actually ended up going back 4 or 5 times to China and stuff with him. But really, I would just come back and teach guitar lessons. That was my main gig, But I had competed in this Canadian Guitar Festival in 2004, I think it was. And I got 3rd place that year. And one of the judges was Don Ross, who was one of my biggest influences. And so we became fast friends after he started to get to hear me play. He liked what I was up to. And I was like, man, you're one of my biggest heroes. And so we would, start doing shows together. He's a Canadian guy. So we'd go up in Canada and tour around some. And so, I was starting to get a little more experience touring here and there. And, but then there was this guy who just wanted to start a record label focused on this kind of music. And so he started it. It's called Candy Rap Records. And so he, put us together and was trying to get some tours arranged for Don and I to go do. And, still kind of struggling along, nobody really knows who I am for sure. But, some people knew who Don was. And then, we had a day off in Milwaukee where the label was based. And he said, let's shoot some videos and put them on this new website, YouTube. And so we did that over the weekend or whatever, shot about 8 videos or something. And he put those up, and then drifting started to get this traction. And, I was teaching guitar lessons here in town in Topeka. And, I had a student that didn't show up, and I logged on to YouTube and saw drifting was on the front page of YouTube. And I was just like, holy, what? And, I just kept going up, and my website crashed. People were wanting to buy tablature and didn't have the band. I had to upgrade my bandwidth to get back online, and I was just, and then Carson Daly, he was a talk show host back in the day. He wanted to have me on his show in LA. I was just like, what? This is nuts. And, but still it was kind of like, well, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what to do. And in January, I think it was only a month later or so, maybe somewhere in there, went to the NAMM show in California, which is the National Association of Music Merchandise. And so, they show new products and all that. So I was out there playing guitar with Don on behalf of, at that time, Dean Markley Strings. And as I was doing that, another guitar player, hero of mine, was at NAMM, Billy McLaughlin. And he came down with his manager to see me play a bit. And his manager saw me, and he was really into what I was doing. So he asked me if I wanted to start working with him. So he hooked me up, and we got a booking agent, and I got an accountant and all this stuff that you need to make things start to happen. And so, the booking agency started to line up shows and touring and stuff. So that's kind of been my main thing ever since. I did and then in that time since then, the whole online music thing has turned into its whole own economy. There's people that don't even go tour at all, but they do stuff on social media, and they got a living and stuff. And I've been thinking about that more myself too a bit. Maybe I should do a bit more of that. I got a wife and 2 kids, and, I love doing shows too, but it'd be good to have sort of maybe a passive, or not passive, but an income where I could, do it from here a bit more. So I've been looking at that some more too, maybe Patreon, things like
that. So obviously, like, your progression was pretty natural, and you also kind of, I feel like, so 17 years ago, that was like what, 2000, I can't do math, 2008, somewhere in there, 2009, somewhere in there. Okay. So you still were able to, like, there was still a little bit of the old touring system left. There was still a little bit of the old record label system left at that point. And obviously you said, like, it's changed, and you have, but it seems like, for me, it seems like it was a very, like, natural. You were able to kind of just take that virality and go into you were able to get a booking agent who put you in theaters, get on Carson Daly, have management, label help, that sort of a thing. But what about sustaining it? Like, and I mean that, and I'm not trying to pry too much, but it's just like, there's a famous Dr. Dre quote, which is, it's easy to get famous. The hard part's keeping it. How have you been able to manage? I mean, we're talking almost decades now of sustained success, viral videos. I mean, you just had a viral video on Instagram here not even a month ago. How are you able to still stay relevant, still stay in the public eye, when, especially now, there's a guitar player here today, gone tomorrow?
I don't know, actually, and it's, I kind of struggling with it myself lately. It's like, to be honest, I growing up as a teenager, I didn't really go out much. I stayed in and played guitar a lot and played video games a lot. And I had like 3 friends that were really close. We would always hang out on the weekends and stuff. And I wasn't, popular in school. I didn't try to be popular in school. But now it's kind of forced upon everyone that wants to be a musician or artist of some type that you need to try to be popular. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that. I don't, what am I going to do that, I just don't know, it's like you need to put another video every other day. And I'm just like, I don't want to even do that kind of thing. So, I don't know. Dude, I'm not too sure about the staying relevant thing and all that, but, trying to have some music released on a fairly regular, schedule is a good idea. And, I think sometimes the social media stuff, it kind of caters more to these temporary kind of things. Like maybe you'll upload a video of you playing a cool little lick or something, and then that goes up and then people are just scrolling, maybe they'll see it, but I don't know if those things are designed for any real impact, I'm trying to figure it out myself a bit, how do you stay relevant in this, total, I'm not even on TikTok, to be honest. I've got an account, but, I've put a couple goofy videos up there just to be silly, but, I have a hard time wanting to put anything on there. It just feels like you're kind of putting something up there that can't be too valuable because it's just going to fly by, Yeah. I've always been a bit more interested in things that have depth and meaning than kind of superficial little things. So it's hard for me to want to engage on that platform a bit. And yeah, I had a hard time with Instagram too, even wanting to get on there, but they used to just get to like 30-second clips or something, I think, when you first started. And I was like, ugh, I don't want to mess with that. Sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there a bit, but I kind of forgot the question a bit. Is it, how do you stay relevant, right?
Yeah. How is there anything that you've done to help you stay relevant on the acoustic guitar circuit, as a performer, as a content creator? I mean, we're talking, again, like I said, most musicians here today, gone tomorrow when they play the social media game, and you've done it. I mean, you still have videos that get millions of views. And so, I mean, obviously you're super talented, and that's a big part of it, but there's a lot of talent out there now as well. So my question is more along the lines of like, is there anything that you think you've done that's helped you stay relevant? You said releasing music consistently. I think that's definitely a big one for sure. But anything else?
I think the other thing is just being able to put on a good show too. Actually, that was the other one that I wanted to mention when you brought up even doing the touring thing and able to turn that into a career. There might be some artists that you see on social media that, they put out a video and it's really great. But what's the spectrum of what they do? Is every song kind of like that? And then if it is, then like, would you be willing to sit through an entire show that's like 2 hours of just that kind of thing? So, I've always loved the different sort of messages you can get from music, the different expression. And, so that's why I have tunes like For My Father or Hunter's Moon, just what's the depth and the dynamics that you can get into, the spectrum of feeling and everything. So if you're going to do a show, you want to try to cover all of that and deliver an engaging performance too. So if you can, put up a clip on Instagram and it's impressive and cool and that's all wonderful, but then if you're going to try to turn it into a on the road type thing, you have to be able to actually put on a good show is the main thing.
So if you were to advise somebody who's had a viral guitar video or a viral music video clip, what advice would you give them to help take it further? Obviously, you said developing a live show, but is there anything else?
Well, shoot, I don't know. I guess, just trying to reach out to different people, to try to get into the genre, and so like even before the social media stuff was vetted, I was trying to get into acoustic guitar places, festivals or these competitions that I would sometimes do. And one of the main thing from those was making contacts and making new friends. And so I don't know if you're people that watch your podcast here might know Antoine Dufour, that he's a a great fingerstyle guitar player from up in Canada. He's my age. And, we met at these guitar festivals like the one in Winfield, Kansas, the Walnut Valley Festival, or the Canadian Guitar Festival. We just became friends. And so I would say, hey, you want to come down to Kansas and Colorado? We'll do some shows and, have a good time, maybe make a few bucks. It wasn't going to be anything too crazy, but we could have some fun and just get to play in front of people. And that was what we did, and I had Craig DeAndrea up in the Connecticut area. He invited me up there. So it was just kind of, networking, but I hate to say that word. It sounds so like business. It really was. It was just like, hey, yeah, you're cool, man. What'd you do on that song? And, and you just become friends and try to help each other. So, that's a good thing to do if you can make some contacts and try to help each other out like that. Yeah. And then just, getting out and playing, like I was saying, I did it like coffee shops for, a couple of years, just every week playing and getting comfortable playing in front of people, talking to the audience, all that stuff. And I know not everybody's the same though. Some people might not be comfortable with that. You just, I have whatever, I think it gets from my dad, just a little bit of whatever that is, trying to be comfortable and relate to people. It doesn't feel too hard for me, which I know it might be harder for some people. So, I don't want to make it sound like it's going to be super easy or anything, but, if you have difficulty with that, the only way to kind of tackle it is to start trying it, and start trying to engage with the audience, say, how's everybody doing? Whatever, getting comfortable and keeping the show flowing best you can. And that's what makes people want to come back. And if you're writing good tunes, that's the most important part.
Definitely. So you have a lot of different revenue streams as an artist. You've got tabs on your website. You got the live shows. You do lessons with TrueFire. What would you say are the most overrated and underrated revenue streams for musicians today?
Well, so far, streaming is really unfortunate. It's I think pretty much everybody knows. I guess it's no mystery that royalty rates on streaming are pretty bad. I recently heard though that they're trying to change that, so hopefully that comes together. Because it's funny to think, you might write something that meant something to a lot of people or means a lot to some people, and it just doesn't materialize into what we all unfortunately need is money to exist in this world. So, it's funny how music has really not been treated fairly, and with the respect to the musicians who create it, really relative to almost any other field, to the level, that it is for musicians, how bad it is on the royalty rates. So that's a bummer. But and then I think almost every musician I know, really, the main source of income is touring and playing in front of people. I could probably put more effort in some other areas and maybe have a bit more income coming in from those places online. But most of the professional guitar players that I know, it's touring. And, then the thing with merch, unfortunately, too, is a bit tricky. Like, a lot of times venues will want to take a percentage for selling at their venue. I mean, that's all standard, but this is just because you're playing at their venue, but it's kind of crazy. But if you get enough, streaming stuff and the online courses, have been good too. You can make a decent income.
Are there any others that you'd say are not as well known as like touring, like for bringing money in? Sometimes I like to do workshops on the road. That's a kind of a good thing too. If you so certain venues might want to have like a workshop that you could do before the concert. That's kind of fun and tax on a bit more money to bring home. But and then there's of course the fans really love that and they get that opportunity too. Something that I've been doing for a few years now is a guitar camp, and it's called the Mckee's Musicarium. We've done about 10 of them or so, I think, and historically we've done them with this company called Dreamcatcher Events, who do guitar camps for all the electric guitar players that you know and love. So that's been a good thing too. I really enjoyed actually teaching lessons before my career took off with performing. So getting back to do workshops and master classes and stuff with students is a lot of fun. And just that
the teaching and the learning is great, but making those connections with fans, there's, some of them have been to like every one of these things. And I'm kind of taking a break this year from hosting my official big camp thing and just kind of hosting a smaller one near where I live. And I'm just kind of inviting some of the guys who've been to multiple camps and kind of make it a nice personal thing and maybe have a barbecue and stuff like that.
Hey, that sounds fun. That sounds like a good time. Barbecue and acoustic guitar music. I'm down. That sounds like a good time.
Right? Yeah.
Summer is right around the corner. Now, if you guys don't know, the summer is the best time to release music. And if you are getting ready to release some new music, the last thing you want to do is not have a good marketing plan for your music. And honestly, it can fall on deaf ears really quick. If you're not planning on how to get on playlists, if you're not planning on how to promote the song, if you're not having physical releases, if you're not having these things planned out, it can be a real tough time for an artist. So what I'm asking you today is, if you are interested in taking your music to the next level, I'd love to do a consult with you. So I have over 20 years in the music industry, done all sorts of stuff from working at a major label to managing bands to releasing my own music. And I've also kind of interviewed some of the greatest people in the music industry. I mean, Greg Howe, Andy Mckee, Adam Levy, these incredible musicians, and they've given me a lot of their wisdom. And I would love to share that with you and package it with you in a way where we can actually take your music to that next level. So if that's something you'd be interested in doing, please email me. Usually my cost is about $150 USD an hour. But we've seen artists completely transform their whole trajectory just on one consult alone. So anyway, if you'd like to do that, not my phone number, gosh darn, I'm tired. But my email address is rhinestonemusic@gmail.com, RHYNESTONE music@gmail.com, and write the word consult in the email line. And I'll love to get to you. And I'll also give you a little special something too if you email me it there. So without further ado, let's get back to our interview. So one of the things I found really fascinating about you, which I did not know, and I can't find any visual proof of this either, but I have seen you mention it, and I want to ask about it, was did you open for Prince in Australia? Is that what I read? Okay. All right. I want to know everything. How did he find out about you?
Well, so that was like 2012, I believe. And I was just at home and I got a call from my manager, and he was saying that it looked like Prince wanted to work together. And I was just like, what in the world? How is this possibly true? And he said he wasn't even sure. So he had to do some digging. And after a while, he called back and said, yeah, it looks totally legit. And so he wanted to fly me up to Minneapolis to meet up and, talk and maybe play some stuff together.
Was this at Paisley Park?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So, flew up there and they do with a limo, a little sign, Mr. Mckee or whatever. And, jump in there and look at the Country Inn and Suites in Chanhassen. And I met the drummer, who was John Blackwell, and the bassist, who was Ida Nielsen. And kind of, said, hey, what's up? Went up to my room, and then there was a phone call in my room, pick it up, and it's like, Mr. Mckee, yes, this is Prince. I was like, what? This is insane. What? So he's like, you ready to come on by Paisley Park? I was, sure, okay. He said, we'll head down to the lobby and we'll pick you up. And so I jump in this car with John and Ida, and I remember John was kind of like, you good enough? And he's like kind of like intimidating a little bit. I was like, I don't know. I'm just here to play guitar. So, got over to Paisley Park and went in, and we went into the studio, and he took me into like a little recording booth, Prince, and was just asking me like a few questions, if I had control of all the rights to my music. And it's like, yeah, he was really concerned about that. Yeah, it's good. And just want to know a little bit more about me. And then, chatted with John and Ina a bit too. And I played a bit of my solo acoustic stuff, and then we played ping pong, and he was like incredible at it. Like, it's like unbelievable. It was like an Olympic level ping pong player as well as being Prince. It's just like, what? So, he'd asked me what else I was up to that year, and I said, I'm actually that year was really crazy because I had an opportunity to open for Dream Theater in Asia that year. So I was like, oh, then it was like April or May. I was going to be over there in Asia with Dream Theater, and I was like, but after that, I don't have too many plans lined up yet. So he's like, all right, and flew back home, and next thing I know, he's booked like these 9 concerts in Australia right after the Dream Theater tour in Asia. So I was like, holy cow, I guess this is really going down. And, flew back up there and did some rehearsals with the band. And we came up with like a medley of about 4 or 5 tunes, I think. And we're kind of set to go and do that, So I was just going to kind of be a special guest that would come up, towards the end of the show or something and play with the band. I was like, oh, cool. This is a cool way to kind of get into this, I guess. We'll see what happens. And I had like one more show in Thailand with Dream Theater, and I got an email, and it was saying like, we'd like Mr. Mckee to open the show as well. I was like, holy cow, cool. And they were, and there was like, you could tell Prince wrote the paragraph or two because it was like, he would use the number 2 instead of the word 2.
No, get out of here. What?
Yeah, I know. I had to look it up. I looked it up the other day. Here, I'm just going to pull it up on my phone.
Oh, please do. I got to see this.
And there's like a couple of pictures too here in the email. But so they were saying like they wanted me to open the show, and rather than like play, one of my tunes or whatever, they had this idea for me to like come up on the stage and play something kind of like in a major key and kind of, but a bit quiet, mellow kind of. And I would start walking down the stage, which is his symbol. And as I would go, I'd have this 50-foot cape on that would be like unfurling as I went. And they were going to project like images of fire and like stars and space and stuff. And I would change the music up to get a more groovy and minor key. And then the whole band would like pop up and kick it off. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. But, yeah, let me see here.
If you want, Andy, you could send me a screenshot of that and I can put it on the video. Would that work?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. We'll do that then. But yeah, because that's wild. That's so crazy. I would frame that in my house.
There's like a couple of drawings too, of like with the cape, like with the email too. So yeah, I'll send it to you.
Oh, please do. We would all lose our minds to see that for sure. Okay, so a couple questions. First off, so what was the vibe like when there's a lot of people who talk about Prince, and I've heard thousands of stories. They talk about how like there's just an aura about him. Did you feel that when you were around him in like just one-on-one talking in the studio?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's definitely I don't know. Yeah, the aura is the perfect word, and it's a bit intimidating. Like to it, there's a bit of a like he was like he could see through you almost. It was really wild. Just very like serious in a way. But then sometimes he'd say something that was obviously a joke, but it was so subtle you'd almost miss it. But yeah, definitely. Yeah, and he was serious with the band too. He kind of had a James Brown kind of ethic, where if you mess up, there could be penalties. So I remember, I think the drummer got fined one day because his drum tech messed something up. I was like, holy cow! I asked John. I saw him in the hotel in the lobby in the morning, and he looked all depressed. I was like, "What's up, man?" And he said, "Oh, I got fined last night because my drum tech had the wrong patch on his electronic drum kit." I was like, dang. But and I'm not trying to diss Prince with that. I mean, that's just the way he ran his ship, and the shows were incredible. I mean, everybody was really had to be on their game, and then the shows were really top notch. So.
How were the rehearsals with him? Because what I've heard is that it was the most well-oiled machine in music was whatever band Prince was playing with. Like they rehearsed several hours a day, even on tour. What were those rehearsals like with the band?
Yeah, so I just kind of joined in on a couple of rehearsals, made sure I knew my stuff, And he was, I guess I wasn't really officially a member of the band. I was just kind of a guest, so he didn't have that sort of thing on, but he really wanted me to be at every rehearsal and all that stuff, I guess. But they were all ready to go with anything. There was one night where he had changed the set list like 5 minutes before the show. It was crazy. Like we were under the stage and he started handing out this set list, and I was like, holy cow, wow. These guys got to know every tune and be ready at a moment's notice. So that was pretty hardcore.
And then, did he have any influence on what you wore for the? Because I mean, Prince shows so stylish. Did he have, as far as what did you wear for those? The like walking out on stage and playing. I mean, obviously you didn't. You said you didn't wear the 50-foot cape, but what did you wear? Did you have an outfit for you?
Yeah, well, they actually had a whole wardrobe, for everyone to pick stuff, and it was like tons of outfits. And I've actually always really liked Eastern religion and philosophy. I'm not necessarily a Buddhist, but I like all that stuff, and I like the discipline of martial arts and things like that. So there was actually some really cool sort of Asian sort of outfits, like silk kind of tops and silk pants and things, and really. Ever since then, I've been really into these really sort of tight fisherman pants. I'm always wearing these big baggy pants. That's kind of where I first encountered them. So I picked that up from Jordan Prince. So I used to kind of go out on those shows with kind of more of an Asian sort of vibe on the clothes.
That's so crazy. And so what did you have any other interactions with him besides that initial meeting and playing with him live?
Yeah. There was always a show after the show. Maybe there was one night where we didn't, but normally, you'd go play some big stadium or arena or whatever and do that show. And then there would be a show like at a club after, and it would go until like 4 a.m. maybe. And the band would all go and be ready to play more music. And so we ended up doing 3 nights in Sydney, 3 in Melbourne, and 3 in Brisbane, if I remember right. And one of those first shows in Sydney, we went to a club afterward, and he had me do a little solo acoustic set, during that, and just did some of my own stuff, which was a little bit different. It's not like nightclub music really what I do, but people were down with it, especially since Prince vouched for me or whatever. People were like, yeah, but that was pretty cool. Like Keith Urban was there, and and all these celebrities, like holy cow, and Flavor Flav was there. Crazy, man.
So another thing Prince is known for doing is offering little nuggets of wisdom to artists. If you've seen any of the stuff of the Tales from the Tour Bus videos he's done, where he's talked with artists and given them little pieces of advice, did he instill any wisdom on you on a personal one-to-one level about your music career or your music or anything like that?
Man, I guess not in particular, other than just, he was really adamant that, I should control my music and, just don't give that up. And you need to have freedom, as an artist, you have to have a sense of freedom. And if you're obligated to someone for something, then that might crush your spirit a bit or, interfere with your thinking of what you want to do with music. So, maintaining control of what you do and what you have to say was the most important thing. And he had actually found me on YouTube. I forgot to mention that earlier. I think you'd asked how he found me. So he saw me on there, and in particular it was my tune Rylan that he liked a lot. So having interactions with him too, other than on stage. There was one night where he had a party up at his room, and so the whole band was there, and then a few other guests and all. And as the night went on, he said that he called me over. He's like, Mr. Mckee, you need to calm these women down. So, why don't you grab your guitar? So I started to play, Rylan and some mellow stuff. And that was when he told me he heard that. And that was how he got into my stuff, was seeing Rylan on YouTube.
Dude, if you don't, I would have the biggest ego in the world if Prince was telling me to play guitar to calm down these women. That's amazing. Well, I don't know how you do it, man.
Me neither. I can't believe half the stuff that's happened, man. It's crazy. So I try not to think about it too much, but Yeah, maybe I'd go crazy if I did.
Man, this whole thing with your career is just proof that if you make music and you do something really well that comes from the heart, uh, doors open up, and it's never the one you think. I mean, I can't imagine you being, 17 years old thinking, "Oh, I'm going to open for Prince in Australia one day and have him tell me to calm these women down with with my guitar playing."
Not even, man. Yeah. Couldn't have ever dreamed it. Insane.
That's wild. So the last question of our interview section here, which is, what is the biggest regret in your music career, if you have
Not
any?
wearing a cape.
Besides that's too easy.
No, um, gosh, I guess I've always been a pretty decisive person, in my life. And if something doesn't feel right, I don't do it. Or if it does, I do. And by trying to live my life that way, it tends to absolve me of regret. So I've always done what I thought was right at the time. So, if it was a mistake later on, that's okay. It was a mistake. But I tend to not really dwell on regret too much, to be honest. So, but, trying to think if there was really something where I should have done that I didn't. But
well, maybe not regret necessarily, but is there anything you wish you'd done differently?
Well, I guess sometimes I listen back on some of my records and feel like I could have done that better. I guess probably every musician does that. And if we didn't just get stuff out, we'd never get anything out. But you can always look back and be like, oh, we need to do that better. So, I sometimes feel that way about some of my old tunes and the recordings that we have of them. But yeah, man, I don't know. That it's all been okay. I think, not too much I'd change.
Well, that's awesome. And I mean, from your story, it just doesn't seem like it's just been such a wild journey. And I mean, it feels like it's only just started. I mean, hopefully you got a long life ahead of you. And, I mean, to keep doing what you're doing, it's working, right? Like, why change anything?
Yep. Yeah. I'm still enjoying getting to play for people, and it's feels like what I'm supposed to be doing here, I'm not too good at many other things. So I need to get out there and play music for people, and it's a blast.
So that concludes the interviews portion of our podcast. I do have a short rapid fire set of questions I'd love to ask you. So just give me the first thing that comes to your mind in these questions. Sound good?
Sounds good.
What is the last album that blew your mind?
Let me see. There was actually there's a group called Dreamers Circus. They're a trio from Denmark. I think they're all from Denmark, and they're all Scandinavian anyway. But it's kind of acoustic instruments, piano and fiddle and things like that. And the name of the album, man, I can't think of it on the top of my head right now. But the whole album's good. I mean, I can send that to you with the picture later if that works.
Yeah, sure. We can include that. And then, who is an artist that deserves more attention?
I'll actually say Trevor Gordon Hall, who's in Triplicity with me. I think he's an amazing writer and player for solo acoustic guitar. Really emotive and beautiful music.
Any songs in particular we should check out?
Yes, This Beautiful Chaos.
This Beautiful Chaos. Let me write that down. Any others?
Tunes or players?
Tunes.
I'll go with The Blue Hour. Another beautiful tune.
Ooh, that's on the Triplicity record, right?
Yeah. I love our version of it as well.
Yeah, that's a really good song. I liked that. I didn't know he wrote that. All right. If you lost all of your gear in a tragic house fire and had to start over with only $1,000, what would you get?
$1,000. Well, I guess it'd be an acoustic guitar of some sort. Yeah, probably the best Martin guitar I could find for $1,000.
Okay, not bad. How do you recover from a bad gig? And what I mean by that is, if a gig is going south and it's going south, how do you recover and turn the gig around?
Okay. Yeah. So in that case, I usually default back to trying to be funny a bit, and whatever it is that's causing the gig to go south, if I'm, screwing up, or if there's like somebody in the audience near the front row who's being loud or obnoxious, something like that, just try to do something to turn it around. There was one time I remember up in Canada where, I was doing a show and there was a lady kind of talking with her friends really loud. And so I was in the middle of drifting, and when I got to one of the parts, I just started playing it really quietly, and I just like stared at her, and, and the whole audience was like, "Oh, okay." And then she brought her volume down, and then everybody laughed and was like, "Okay." So kind of worked out.
Dang, that's gutsy. That's gutsy. That's what you can. That's what you can do as a solo performer, though. You can do things like that, right? Can't do that with a band, really.
Yeah.
Who is a guitarist you look up to?
My biggest influence really in guitar playing at all is Michael Hedges. I still, every time I hear him, it's just inspiring. Even though I've heard every song hundreds of times probably by now. He really revolutionized acoustic guitar playing in a huge way, bigger than anyone before, in my opinion. Just the approach to playing, the approach to writing steel string instrumental guitar music, just really changed everything. And yeah, his imagination and sophistication, everything about his playing is so inspiring.
And then what do people get wrong about being a musician?
I guess that it's easy, I guess, it might look easy sometimes and things like that. But I think for me, the term being a musician is pretty unique in my definition of it anyway. I think that might be a difference between, say, a guitar player and a musician, or a drummer and a musician, or a singer and a musician. And that it's all semantics, really, I guess. But what I think it means to really be a musician is to be in touch with yourself, and then to be able to express it through your instrument. So, if someone's great at guitar playing and they can shred and play every solo from everybody, but they've never actually created something that they dove into their heart and soul to pull out, I think that's a whole other skill that is important, and it's not validated necessarily by social media and things like that. When you see a video of somebody doing something crazy cool, it's not necessarily that they search their soul to find that thing for you, to tell you. So that's what it means to be a musician in my view, or maybe I should use the word artist instead. I suppose it doesn't matter what medium it is, if you're a painter or sculptor or a musician or whatever. So I think a lot of people just don't even think about that, or even that, like, that whole component isn't even in people's mind anymore about art, that you're trying to find something important to say, more than just being able to be proficient on your instrument of choice. So that's kind of and it sounds like the tortured artist thing and all that. Sometimes you have to search for your feelings and experience, to find something we're saying. And that's the part about being a musician most important, I think.
Well, I don't think there's a better way we can end the podcast than with that. Andy Mckee, thank you so much for coming on the Rhinestone podcast. It was such a pleasure to talk to you about your story, about all the crazy stuff with Prince, which I can't wait to see these photos. I'm gonna blast them on this podcast for sure. All the stuff we talked about, rhythm and melody and building a career. Obviously, you have the Triplicity record that comes out with Callum Graham and Trevor Gordon Hall. That comes out April 4th. Where can people go to buy that record? Obviously, it'll be on streaming, but...
Yep, it'll be on all the streaming stuff. And then we've got triplicity.com. And I just kind of came up with that word, and I didn't know if it was real or not, but looked it up. And then so we decided to change the spelling a little bit. It has an I at the end, just so your viewers know. So it's tripliciti.com. You can get the album there. We'll have vinyl and CDs and transcriptions of all the pieces with all the different guitar parts from everybody and all that. So
awesome. Anything else you want to plug? The floor is yours.
Shoot, I guess just follow me on social media and go to AndyMckee.com for latest news and stuff. I'm redesigning the website now. I'm going to have a new web store up before too long here, and you can get transcriptions of my music and all of my recordings on there as well. And yeah, man, we'll have that video game EP before too long. And then next year, I'm planning on actually doing a 20th anniversary for Art of Motion. So those tunes, I'm going to re-record it with some of those new interpretations I was talking about earlier with different introductions and new ways of playing the tunes a bit. So that'll be coming out next year. And yeah, I'll just be hitting the road as much as I can and hope to see some of you guys out there sometime.
I'm looking forward to the Berlin remix of Drifting. Can't wait for it.
yeah, that'll be
good. Well, Andy, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate everything. And if you ever make it to Atlanta, I'll definitely come out for the shows for sure.
Yeah. Well, it was a real pleasure to be on, man. So thanks for having me.
Hi, everybody. That is our show. Thank you so much, Andy Mckee, for joining us today. We learned so many cool things. The Prince pictures alone are worth the price of watching this video. It's just wild. I want to thank Andy so much for coming on the podcast. You can check out his new record, Triplicity, which features Callum Graham and Trevor Gordon Hall. It comes out April 4th. It should be out by the time this podcast airs. And yeah, please check it out. Go check out all of Andy's music. It's so great. I've had Ryland stuck in my head the last week since I've been doing all the research for this podcast. It's phenomenal. Go check him out. He's amazing. Our intro and outro music is Target Rockstar by Maddie Music Madness. My name is Banner Driscoll. I'm the host of this podcast. You can find me all sorts of places. Most places I'm Banner Driscoll Media. Best way to get a hold of me, though, is through our Rhinestone email or our Instagram, which is Rhinestone Productions, or our email is rhinestonemusic@gmail.com, RHYNESTONE music@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Even if you just want to tell me hi or get in contact, that's definitely the best way to do it. A lot of great podcasts coming up, guys. If you guys have not done it yet, please hit that subscribe button. It just helps us so much in getting bigger and better guests, which is what we want to do. Someday, man, we're going to get a Beatle, or I'm going to get one of my heroes. I'm going to get like Noel Gallagher. That's like the dream podcast guest. We can get Noel Gallagher in here, man. I can only do it with your help if you hit that subscribe button, right? I don't care if you hate Noel Gallagher. If you hate Noel Gallagher, tell me. Put it in the comments. But I love Noel Gallagher. I want to know what you guys think as far as getting him on here. And the only way we can do that is we have the right subscribers. So thank you, guys. And until next time, happy music making.